coming onto this ear at the top here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this coal grey again, and I'm going to come around the back of this ear. It's quite cold around the back there. I'm going to come on the top of this as well with that coal grey one. And then I'm going to take the warm grey one and just follow the shape of this ear down. Follow the sections. And that just helps me just to start following the sections and plotting the sections in the direction that they're going. It just helps me sort of have a look at it before I start to put the darker colour in. I just find that plotting the areas in is quite, with the lighter colours, it's quite useful. I find it quite useful. I've actually gone wrong here. I've actually taken the coal grey one over the edge. So I'm just taking that back a little bit. The coal grey one actually comes up here. So that bit's in, but there's a gap there. Not that it really mattered, but I've seen it, so I'm going to correct it. Once I've done that, I'm going to take the warm grey 6, and I'm just very gently, really light pressure and little sort of sketchy lines. I'm just going to start to plot these darker bits in so that I can see where this is actually going. We've got a darker bit that comes all the way over the top, and I'm plotting it in again in the direction that the fur's going to go in. Plotting that around there. So that's the top of his ear. It comes around here. Dark bit, and then this actually goes really quite dark in here. So I can pop that in now with the warm grey 6, and I'm sure we'll have some dark sepia in there as well. But I'll pop it in with the warm grey 6 and just bring that, feather that down. Let's go in with the dark sepia actually, and we'll just make that darker in there. So all at the side of this antler is really quite dark, and actually there are a couple of little bits that are going up this way, a couple of dark bits that are just sort of feeding up into it, and it's actually helping to create a 3D effect on this antler. So we'll pop that in, bring that down. And then I'm going to go in with a little bit of coal grey behind here. And I'm just going to dab that out as well, because I can see I've made that go too far. Not that it really matters, but you know, if I see something, I want to try and correct it if I can see that it's not right. Otherwise, it'll jump out at me forevermore. You know, nobody else would probably ever notice it, but you know, it would just jump out all the time whenever I looked at it. Probably not that little bit. That's probably a slight exaggeration, but you know, other mistakes and things, I like to correct them because otherwise they will jump out at me. But I doubt that little bit would have jumped out at me. I'm going to come in with the brown ochre 10% around here. So I'm just filling this area in, just sort of blocking it in, really. Blocking that in, and on this side. Blocking that in as well. I'm going to put a bit of the coal grey in here along the top. And it's such a tiny space that I'm just literally colouring it in, really. Not really thinking too much about the direction or anything. I just want to colour it in and get some colour in there. Bring this off the bottom down here as well. But that I do want to keep in the direction that it's going. We've got this bit that comes down here as well. This is a slightly darker bit, so I'll just pop that in. Comes around and joins that bit underneath. Going to come in with a bit of a nugget underneath here. Bring this nugget round off this dark bit at the top, and again just sort of feed that in the direction that the ear's going in. Up here, got another dark bit here actually that I missed. That's coming up there. So that is quite dark there. And I'm just looking as to where there's a line that comes off here, and it comes, so we've got this dark bit here, it comes around here, doesn't it? I was just looking where that little shadow came off, because that's going to shape the side of that face, but it's there. So just to see where that went, I had to sort of work back. I went back to the eye and then just sort of followed it across with the ear to see where to bring that little line off the bottom of the ear, but it's there. I'm going to come into this bit with the light flesh, 10%. Down here as well, actually. And then a little bit of the brown ochre, 50% from the Luminance, bring that round. Just a light covering. I don't want to cover over that light flesh that went underneath it. Just bring over this light covering. There's quite a strong bit of pink in there again, or pinky red colour, pinky orange colour. I think it's probably a little bit more orange than this Venetian red actually, but because I've been using the Venetian red, I'll just carry on using the Venetian red, but I think you could get away with something a bit sort of more orange actually. Perhaps something like the Sanguine might work in there because it's a bit more sort of rusty coloured. So before I start to build a little bit of depth into here with a bit more contrast, I'm just going in with a warm grey 1 and just bringing this very gently together a little bit, just blending these layers, bringing it together. Filling in that tooth a little bit and bringing those colours together. I'm going to come back over the top again. Actually, no, before I do that, if I do that, I think I'm going to lose that dark bit. So let's take a warm grey 6 again, and let's put this back in, because I think I'll just lose it otherwise. So take the warm grey 6 and take it up and over the shape of the ear. You can see that there's extra little bits of texture and sort of fur definition in here. So I'm keeping the shape of that so it sort of comes up and over the top here. Comes around there. And just comes over. Really light pressure. And then it comes quite sort of dark. Feather this in on this edge here. Feather that down there. Bring this darker bit down here as well. And back to these little fur directional strokes now on the edge of this ear to put the fur and the texture into this area. Backwards and forwards. Put a few bits of hairs coming off around here as well, actually shaping the bottom of this ear, bringing that down and just shaping it into this. I'm going to put that in with some cold grey underneath because it's more sort of blue, but it has got these extra little bits. I'm going to bring the warm grey 5 into this area here to come up into the bottom of this ear and just follow this around. Shape the bottom of this ear and also shape it coming off the top of this dark, or the bottom of this dark bit that's up here at the top. Shape that coming round as well. And bring that round. I want to press on really lightly because I just don't want to obliterate all that colour that we've put down underneath. Just want to put a suggestion of that texture again. Bring that round. And I'm going to go into this area as well with a little bit of the sepia 50%, just to put a little bit of that brown stroke purple into there. And just blend this round. Going to blend under this ear as well, just bring this out and under this ear. To just define the edge of this dark bit a little bit more. This just needs defining, as does the edge along here actually. So I'm just going to go back in with that dark, the warm grey 6, isn't it, that we use in the warm grey 6. And just define this. I want to use the burnt sienna from the Polychromos to blend the top of this head in to the bottom of this antler. So just with circular motions, I'm just going to bring that up into the side of that ear and also just put a little glaze of it on the inside of this ear here. And the other thing that I'm going to use to glaze gently is a little bit of cinnamon over here, and again bring the cinnamon into this area here. And a bit of the light flesh 10%. Blend that. I'm going to put a little bit of the cold grey 1 up here as well. And just blend that out gently, not pressing on hard, just blending that out gently. I said I was going to bring some cold grey under here, so I'm bringing the cold grey under here. What I want to do is to take a little bit of the, this is the light cobalt blue. I was thinking it was a percentage, light cobalt blue. I was going to say light cobalt 10% then, but I think I've just lost the plot. But I'm going to put a little bit of the blue up into there, and also then bring a bit of this darker area off the bottom of this ear. Take that around the side. And just blend that in on the side there. And then just neaten this up a little bit with this warm grey. Just neaten that up ever so slightly. Take some of that up into that top part of the coat. And bring some round this way. Under this ear. And darken that down on the side of the ear. I'm going to blend the bottom of this ear a little bit more as well. Just make that ever so slightly darker. There we go. So we just put a little bit more of a, put a bit more dimension into the ear. And make sure that's nice and dark behind there. I'm actually going to take a bit of the Payne's Grey and put the Payne's Grey behind there actually, because it is really, really dark. And there is, I can definitely see that it's, you know, a little bit of brown, but sometimes I think actually I can also see a bit of blue in there. So a bit of the Payne's Grey on top of the dark sepia will work nicely. I'm just going to put it in there as well. And just bring a little bit of the Payne's Grey down off the bottom of this ear as well, just a little bit. There we go. Got the cold grey one, and I can just blend that out on the bottom. There we go. I've just taken that cold grey and I've just softened that edge again. So just over the edge of that ear, I've just softened that ever so slightly. Come around here. I'm going to move on to this part of the antler here, and I'm just going to do this little bit, just this section here, and I'm going to come around this section. One thing I have forgotten to do, haven't I, is I haven't done this bit. Let's just pop that in there with the light flesh. I'm going to use this Venetian red again to bring this around here. And what I'm going to do is come under. So first of all, I'm going to come around here with a cold grey 4, just to bring that little bit around there. And then I'm going to come around here with, underneath this, with a bit of the walnut. That needs to come around here. bring it underneath and just shape it again a little bit, just like we did with the other section over here. Just shape it to create a little bit of form. What I'm going to do for this part, actually, I'm going to take the slice tool. You could use a craft knife and just drag that around to just come over and just create a little bit of this extra little bit of again, I think it's the antlers that are shedding, so just that extra little bit, and then just go in with a brown ochre 10% to just blend that out a little bit. And I will use some of the slice tool in other areas around here as well. And I've explained this many times. If you've not seen me use the slice tool before, this is the manual pen cutter, and it has a ceramic blade. The blade won't cut you, but it will cut paper. It will cut paper, it'll cut sellotape, it'll cut, it's quite remarkable really. But it's also very, very useful for removing pigment off the paper, whether that's pastel matte, watercolour paper, drafting film, whatever you're using. When we're working with the watercolour paper, we need to make sure that we've got all our base layers down, and we've obviously been putting base layers down as we go, because this will only take the pigment back off to that first layer that's gone down. I won't go into it too much because I've explained it quite a lot, but if you are new to it, and if it's something that you'd like me to demonstrate more, put a comment under, you know, this part of the tutorial or any part of the tutorial, or send me a message and I'll see it, and I can always create a separate little video. So back in with this walnut brown, coming around the one side of this just to make it sort of stand out a little bit. There we go. And then, like I say, there's a little bit of red up here, so I'm going to put this Venetian red back in. And then we go into this light flesh. Bring that in. And then I'm going to use the dark sepia to just start to shape it. So bring, obviously we need the depth underneath it. And it's just a suggestion of an extra little bit of antler that's coming off, so I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm not going to do much more than that to it. Might go back and add a little bit, you know me. But I'm just going to put a little shadow. There's a bit of shadow coming around there, following it around, and there's the bit of shadow that's coming underneath here. But other than that, we'll just see how that goes. To lighten that up a little bit, to just bring that forward, I'm just going in with a little bit of buff titanium just to lighten. Put little highlights on here. There we go. Leave that like that. And then back in with the warm grey one on this bit here. And let's just do this part of the antler. So I've gone in with the warm grey one. What I'm going to do now is to go over that with the brown ochre 10%. Bring that around there. just put another covering over it, not pressing hard, just put another covering, and you can see how small the top of this antler is. We're not going to get, I keep saying that, don't I? And if you're working on the A4 version, the smaller version, it'll be even less. You know, but it might be just one little line is all you need. But that's, you know, that's fine. I'm going to build this up slowly again, and I'm going to go in with the cinnamon down here. I'm just using circular strokes because I can't really see any direction, so I'm just looking to get a nice coverage. So I'm going to come in with the cinnamon. You remember this little bit, I put the cold grey one in there as a base layer. I did that earlier. And I can blend the cinnamon into that as well. That's going to give me a bit more of a purpley tint when we're finished. And then bring this round really lightly again. And then I'm going to come in with this Venetian red that we've been using really lightly because it is quite a strong colour, and I just want a tint of it in this area. So bring that around. Bring it up here as well. Okay, so I've got that there. So before I blend that out, before I start to add the darker bits in, I want to go back in and I want to blend that out. So I'm going to blend out down here again with the coal grey, because I said there was some coal grey down there. And then just really lightly blend this together. And I'm also going to blend with a bit of the light flesh 10% in the areas where I can see that there's extra sort of yellow tones. I want to go in down here, coming off this bit down here. I want to go in with the Caput Mortem Violet. It comes around under here and sort of shapes up a little bit. And I'm just going to use it to start to shape this antler. So I'm going to bring it around here as well. Bring it around here. Keeping it really light. Just using it to, and I'm not going all the way up to the edge around here. I'm leaving the light little bit, but I'm just shaping it. And up into that area, and then again it's coming around this side, and I'm just going to curve that round and create little lines around there because it's quite small. Pop a little bit down there as well. I want to come into this area now, over the top of where we've put this Caput Mortem Violet, and I want to come in with the Van Dyke Brown and bring this colour around here. And up into this part of the antler up here. Still keeping this darker bit around here and remembering that there's the lighter bit on the edge. So I'm still sort of keeping that. The cap at Morton Violet comes up to here actually, and then starts to come across a little bit. So I'll bring that up a little bit. And just using it to shape the bottom of this antler. I'm going to use that sepia 50% that we used earlier and used in the other side of the antler. And I'm going to start to bring it around the edges and use it to put a little bit more definition and to create a bit more 3D in this antler. So I'm just looking on the reference photograph where I can see it's darker and just following around with the direction of the antler. And bringing that round. It's going to make that little bit darker behind there because we've got a bit at the back of this antler, so I want to make sure that that's nice and dark. And then bring off this dark sepia. I keep saying dark sepia, don't I? It's sepia 50%. Dark sepia is obviously the Polychromos. And shape this. Bring the dark under here. And again, doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be something that looks something like an antler. I'm going to use a little bit of the brown ochre, 10% around here, and blend this together. I'm going to blend this bit with coal grey. Bring some coal grey in there. And take the coal grey up the side. I've got the burnt ochre 10% around this bit around here, up there. I'm going to come back in with a bit of the cinnamon as well into this area and up here. I've covered up this yellow bit here, these lovely yellow bits. I've just realised I've covered those up. So what I'm going to do is I will put those in with a slice tool in a minute and put the yellow back in. So that doesn't really matter, that's fine. I'm going to go in round here with a coal grey 6 again. And I'm going to bring some of this texture and definition down the side. So it sort of comes around here. It just comes on the inside of the edge. take that on the inside and then just blend that out a little bit. Blend this out under here as well. Just want to follow a little bit of the texture and the pattern along the underside of this antler. Bring that down there, and also on this side bring it down again, following the direction. Following the direction of the antlers. And I'm just looking at the reference photograph and I'm just building it up slowly, just, you know, looking for the darker colours as I can see them. Just letting that build up. I'm just going to blend that out again, really gently. I said I was going to take the slice tool and just put these little yellow bits back in. So I'm just going to take a bit out there, a bit out there, and take a bit out under there. And put those back in. Put a bit of texture in there as well, actually. Oh, and down here, I wasn't really planning on using the slice tool just yet. I would have used it at the end, but as I've forgotten those bits. And then I'm going to take the light flesh and just pop those in. Probably go a bit hotter with it as well, actually. I've just taken the orangish yellow from the Pablo range and just pop those in. Just a little bit more yellow than the light flesh, but if you don't have that, then the light flesh, you know, that was quite good. Or if you just got a yellow or something, you know, that would work as well. Just needed a little bit more yellow in there. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little bit more of the Venetian red into this section, and I'm just putting a little glaze at this stage just to darken that down a little bit. That's there. And I think that bit is pretty much there. I'm going to make sure that's nice and dark behind. Make sure that's dark behind there. The slice tool can be really quite useful for correcting mistakes as well. And I've just noticed that just like over there, I filled a bit in that I shouldn't. I filled this area in here. I added the colour and I shouldn't have done. You probably wouldn't have noticed if I'd have left it, you know, but it isn't actually part of the head. The head actually comes around this way. So the slice tool has, I could have tried to have dabbed that out or got the tumble in, but it's such a small area. But the slice tool has made quite light work of removing that out. And that's another reason for me always putting the base layers down, because as I said, the slice tool will only go back to that first layer. It'll only go back to the first layer of pigment, the first colour that went down on the watercolour paper. It'll never go back. It won't go back to the raw paper. By the time it's gone back to the raw paper, you've actually sort of scratched into your paper and you've ruined your paper. It always goes back to that first layer. So by putting a light layer down underneath, it means that you've always got something to go back to if you need to correct it. And that has been useful for me many, many times whilst I've been drawing. It just means that I can correct something quite easily. I can sort of almost redraw it with the slice tool, or you could redraw it with a craft knife if that's what you wanted to do. So the slice tool or a craft knife and the base layers are quite a valuable sort of stage, or the base layers are a valuable stage, and then the slice tool is a really useful tool for correcting mistakes if it needs correcting. Just whilst before I come down onto another part of the tutorial, I'm just going to take my cold grey and I am just going to blur out these edges again by just going over the edges. I don't want to go out too far away from the edges. I just want to do little circles around and over the edges, and that again is just going to diffuse these antlers. And just keep them. I don't want them really sharp. They've obviously got to be there and they've got to have texture, but I don't want them really sharp. I want the edges blurred out a little bit, just to stay in keeping, almost like with the atmosphere of the environment that the reindeer's in. That sort of cold, perhaps slightly foggy, sort of misty atmosphere. And this is what I want. This is the effect I want with these antlers. By just blurring that out a little bit, I just want to take away from any real focus that's on these antlers. I want the focus to be on this face. So I'm just very, very gently blurring that out. And I hopefully the camera is picking it up, because it's making quite a difference on the paper. Quite a nice little technique to just create a little bit of atmosphere around the reindeer. Keep it a little bit more sort of diffused, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so that's that middle little bit of the antlers done. That's those done there. Let's move on to this. Let's move on to this bit here, actually. This is another bit that's going to be very similar to this bit. So let's move on to that bit. So down this side of the antler, I'm going to come in with a cold grey. So we've got this bit that comes up here. So down this side of the antler, I'm going to come in with a cold grey. Bring that down there. Cold grey 1 as the base layer. And then I'm going to come over this side with a warm grey 1. And bring that around over here. I want to come in with, just like before, the brown ochre again. Brown ochre 10% over part of this. Part of this antler here, and also the light flesh 10% into this area around here. Just like before again, I want to go in with some cinnamon. I'm going to go in with this cinnamon, a nice light coverage of it. A nice coverage of the cinnamon over there. And then I'm going to use the sepia 50% and just start to add a bit of this definition in again. So I'm going to come around up the top up there. We've got a little bit that comes out on this one here, so I'm just going to scribble a little bit of that in there. Start to shape this down. It sort of comes around, doesn't it? And then we've got another bit that comes around here as well. So I'm just looking for bits of definition really that's going to start to shape it. We've got that bit is filled in there, and then we're going to shape this around this way underneath. And it's going to come down. And then again we've got an extra little bit that's sort of coming out there. Almost like it looks like little knots on a tree, doesn't it? It's quite remarkable, really. Shape that bit. And the sepia 50% is just a nice, fairly neutral colour to start almost drawing in the form on the inside. So I'm just sort of taking it and drawing it in, and then I'll be able to go over it with other colours. It's quite a neutral colour, but it's a colour that I can see in here quite a bit, so quite useful to sort of use it because I can see it in quite a few places anyway. This starts to come around. And then that comes around there into the head, and then we've got all this sort of texture coming off here again. We'll pop that texture in. So I've started to get the texture in and some of the lines that are just creating the form, and then what I want to do, start to darken this down now, and I want to go back in with the cinnamon because I can definitely see that this is quite pink. So I'm just using little circular strokes because there's not a lot of sort of direction that I can see. I've started to put the direction in with the sepia 50%, so I can just use the circular strokes and almost just sort of colour it in at this stage. Bring that round. And then I'm going to use the Venetian red that we've used again in just little circular strokes. Bring that round. And just look for where I can see this sort of darker pink colour. I'm going to go into this area up here with a little bit of that manganese violet that I was using earlier. And if you haven't got it, that's absolutely fine. Just go in with either the sepia 50% if you've got that, or just go in with one of your cold greys. But I just want to pop a little bit of that into this area, and now I've seen that, actually I'm going to put it on this side as well. Put it here. Just a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. I'm still going to go over it. I'm going to go over it with the cold grey. Just keeping that cold grey to the outside edge. I just want that little tint of purple in there. I want to start to think about blending this out. I'm going to blend out up here with the warm grey 1. Just bring that together, and it sort of brings that purple into that other darker grey that we've just put in there, so it's quite useful. And then I'm actually going to blend this bit down here with a cold grey. Blend that out. And then back to a warm grey. Put a bit of the cold grey up there as well. So you can see that there aren't really any rules as such. You know, I've just blended that with warm and cold grey up there, and it's absolutely fine. I'm quite happy with it. So, you know, you don't have to keep the warms and the colds away from each other. I'm going to come down this area, and I'm coming down with a bit of that burnt sienna from the Polychromos. Just blend. Again, sort of shaping it around the direction of the antler, so the way that I can see it going. Just adding a bit on that side as well, just to keep it all balanced. So because I've used it there, I'm just going to bring it in. Or because I've used it here, I'm just going to bring it in here. Just so that it all sort of looks a bit uniform. I'm going to come into this area with the coal grey 6. Come down the side of it. Just like we've done in other areas, start to think about shaping and some texture now. So start to add some of those darker values in, starting to add some of those darker values in. There is texture over here, but it's such a small area, I'm not going to get much in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put little bits here and there to create a bit of form, but I'm not going to be able to get all of this texture over here. It's quite a bright red. It's almost like a bright sort of fuchsia colour actually. I may pop a bit of that in at the end. I'm going to go with the Venetian red at the minute, just because I'm very conscious that I don't want to keep telling you to get lots of little pencils out for just tiny little bits. But these little bits, this bit here and this bit here and these here, they really are quite intense. If you have got like a real sort of hot fuchsia colour, then you could certainly use that. But otherwise, I'm just going to stick to the Venetian red. And just adding a little bit of texture into this area. I'm going to go in with a bit of the burnt ochre, 50% in there. And I'm just using some little circular motions to get a little bit of texture, but also some of the values into this area to create the 3D effect around here. And again, it's just a case of building it up slowly. And if you build it up slowly, you can't go too far wrong with it. It's when, you know, if I was to really rush in and try and do this all in one go, or, you know, really sort of quickly, I don't think it would work so well for me. Much better for me to build it up a little bit at a time. I come in with this Van Dyke brown again. Bring a bit of this Van Dyke brown through this area. actually put a bit more of the Venetian red in because it's quite a lot of sort of pinky red going on in here. I put a little bit of the dark sepia in just to really make sure that we have got these dark values where we want them to go, and just looking for little bits of texture. And up the top up here, actually, I'm going to put the darker bits in with the Payne's grey. So we've got some dark bit coming around this side. Keep that coming round. Might as well just carry on with the Payne's grey around here, actually. Let's just bring that off the bottom. And just a little bit of texture in the middle. And I think this one is pretty much done for the moment. Again, I'm going to come in with this slice tool. It's just easier to put this in afterwards rather than trying to preserve it. Sometimes it's just easier to sort of cover over it and then put it back in, if that makes sense, rather than trying to preserve those little bits. A little bit around there as well, isn't there? So just like before, actually, I'm just going to use the orangish yellowish from the Pablo range because it's quite a nice sort of bright yellow, but you could go with, it's got quite an orangey, so almost like a gold colour really, but go with whatever colour you've got. That's absolutely fine. You just need a nice sort of bright yellow. Well, not a bright yellow, more like a gold yellow. That's the sort of colour we're looking for. So that's that part of the antler done. Just blending that out with the brown ochre, 10%. And just like before, I'm going to take this cold grey and I'm going to diffuse the edge. Obviously, there's no point me going over where the antler is behind because I'm going to sort of go up to that line anyway when I create the other part of the antler. But I can just sort of go around the outline of the rest of the antler. So just diffusing that edge again. And I'm going to bring this sepia into this bit here because I can see that it just needs to be defined there a little bit more, and just add a bit of that. Okay, so I think that's a good place to leave this part of the tutorial here. So we'll leave it there for now. Thanks very much for drawing along with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next part of the tutorial. Thanks very much. Bye for now.